So this is the second of our book reviews. And when I did the first one, I said that I'll try and do a book review every week. But unfortunately, it's been 2 or 3 weeks since I did the first one. And the reason for that is because I completely forgot about D-Day. I was booked to go to France. I went onto the beach of Sword and Omaha Beach and also Pegasus Bridge and the Merville Battery because it was the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and apparently it's going to be the last time they actually do it, so had to be there. So I apologise if this book review is a little bit late, but let's get into it. So the book I'm going to review this week is the Bansenshukai. The Bansenshukai means 10,000 rivers collected at sea. It's a collection of ninja strategies, tactics, philosophy. It talks about the mindset of the ninja. Now, this is written by a gentleman whose name is Yasutake Fujibayashi. Now, don't go trying to contact him. He's been gone a long while, about 400 years. This book was written way back in the 16th century. Supposed by this gentleman, I say Yasutake Fujibayashi. Now, the name Fujibayashi is a family name associated with a ninja. There are other names associated with ninja too, like Toda or Momochi, like in Sandei Momochi. So it's possible that this book was written by somebody who was a ninja or was part of the ninja families. We can't prove that, of course. It could be written by somebody who was just using that name to give some kind of authenticity to their writings, but I kind of question why would somebody want to do that. Today, yes, we've got Amazon and bookshops, and maybe you, as an author, you want to use somebody else's name, which does happen quite a lot, to be honest. You know, people use a name of maybe a retiring author to get permission to use that name, and the known author's name is on the top, but it's actually written by somebody else. That's quite common. But in the 1600s, when there was no Amazon, when there was no bookshops, why would someone want to lie about their name? And if it's a ninja name, if anything, you want to keep it quiet, right? You wouldn't want to promote the fact that you're part of the Fujibayashi family and therefore you're a ninja. So, yeah, we don't know whether it was actually written by this person. A little bit of faith comes into this, but whatever. It's an incredible book. So as I said, the Bansenshukai is a collection of strategies, tactics, philosophies from these different ninja families, these clans, these ruha that have been put into this book by this gentleman, supposedly Yasutake Fujibayashi. Now, of course, it was written in old Japanese and it's been translated. It was translated by a gentleman called Don Roley. Now, myself and Don Roley haven't always seen eye to eye in the past. We've had a few disputes on martial art forums and so on and so forth, but credit where it's due. Don Roley lived in Japan for, I think, for about 15 years, so he knows the culture. He speaks fluent Japanese. I don't know how good his old Japanese is, but he speaks fluent Japanese, and he also studies martial arts. He's a very high-level instructor under Dr. Masaya Hatsumi, the 34th Grandmaster of the Togakareru Ninjutsu tradition. So he should know what he's talking about. And he calls it the Ancient Tomes of Ninjutsu, and this is a tome. This is big. It only just fitted on my bookshelf. So this is a very, very big book. It actually has in it 534 pages. So when you buy this, you're buying a lot. You're not just buying the Bansenshukai, by the way. Also in here is another book called the Shoninki, and there's also a number of poems, which I'll talk about in a moment. But the main thing in this book is the Bansenshukai. And I must admit, he's done a great job. It's a very, very nicely laid out book. He starts with a table of contents. Volume 1, Volume 2, it tells you what they're about. For example, Volume 3, Session 2, the correct mind. Volume 4, Shochi 1, Wisdom for the Commander. And all the page listings are in here. Yeah, great book. Then it goes into the Shoninki, and then finally it finishes with 100 poems of Ii Saburo Yoshimori. And he talks about the history and some of the verses, but most of this is the Bansenshukai. He's got an introduction, and for those people who don't know anything about martial art, don't know anything about the samurai, the ninja, he spends quite a bit of time going to what he calls the ninja versus samurai, a deeper explanation, and really talks about the history of the samurai, the ninja, and some of the myths associated with it. And there is page after page, there's probably about, I don't know, 20 pages, just introducing the ninja and the samurai, and he goes into the Japanese way of war. So there's a lot of background information before we actually get into the book, and also he talks about the spiritual influences too. So he goes into that quite a lot before we actually get into the introduction. In fact, I'm now on page 42, so almost 42 pages as an introduction, just to give you some background on the history of the samurai, the ninja, the spiritual influences, and some of the tactics and strategies of the samurai and ninja before we actually get into the book. And then there's an introduction by the translator himself. And then we get in on page 45, we get into volume 1. And he's done a really good job because the translation is actually in italics. So you read the italic script, and that's actually the words, the translation from the Bansenshukai. But then in kind of normal script, he actually gives explanation of what this means. So for example, on page 45 and 46, it's kind of introduction of the Bansenshukai, but then he goes into what it actually means, the explanation, and he spends a bit of time on that. Also, of course, with some nice pictures, some nice black and white pictures. And that's how it proceeds for the book. Very well laid out. And yeah, it's like he's translating the book almost word for word. And when there's any ambiguity, he explains what that actually means. I think probably with some of the words, maybe some of the page could have done with some footnotes. There's a few terms in here which even I didn't know what they were. I thought, okay, what does that mean? What does that word mean? So it'd be nice to have maybe some footnotes in here, but he does give an explanation about every section of the book. Now, you're not going to find any fighting techniques in here. There's no bow, there's no staff, there's no sword, there's no unarmed combat. It is a strategy, it is a tactics, it's a philosophy of the ninja. There is a section on some of the tools in his use, i.e. for breaking into doors and getting through doors. There's some ladders, there's some ways of crossing water, etc. But there's no actual physical unarmed combat techniques, etc. It is literally the strategies, the tactics, the tools, the philosophies, the mindset of the ninja. And to be honest, you've got to really study this book. This isn't a book you can just pick up, read and put on your shelf. You've got to study this. You know, if you start reading, just say, volume 2, The Correct Mind, session 1, you read it and it says the shinobi is built on having a correct mind. The result of the shinobi's actions is deceit and plots. This means that if you do not have the correct mind, you will be unable to carry out your plans with the changing situation. So you have to read that, you have to take that in. What does that mean? Confucius has written that a man cannot control himself if his base is flawed. By the correct mind, we mean protecting the principles of virtue, justice, loyalty, and faith. Without these 4 principles, one cannot be a person of glorious achievements, nor be able to adapt to the changing circumstances. And as I say, you need to read this. What does it mean? You've got to kind of read between the lines as you make your way through his work. This to me is like a Bible. It's a Bible for understanding the mindset of the ninja. Because within this book, supposedly, are the teachings of these different schools, these different families, these different ruha in this book. That's been passed down for hundreds of years to us today. So, yeah, I think, also the other thing is very nice is now and again he's actually put in the Japanese kanji. The kanji, for example, for centaur, the kanji for heart and mind and loyalty. The kanji are in there too. If you want to learn the kanji, they're there too. So that's just an aside there. So yeah, really nice book, really well laid out. Hasn't got a lot of pictures because it's a translation, right? If there are any pictures, they are the pictures from the Bansenshukai. So, for example, on the page with tools, for example, yeah, there are some illustrations straight from the Bansenshukai. I'll just try to find maybe another one. Yeah, so there's a few more here. As you can see, again, these are pictures actually found in the Bansenshukai, in the original work. So, yeah, he did a really good translation. Now, I don't speak old Japanese. I don't speak much modern Japanese, to be honest. So I can't say how well he's translated this work. I really can't, because I'm not the person to do that. But reading it, it makes a lot of sense. As I say, where there is ambiguity, there is an explanation of what it actually means. Also in here, of course, is the Shoninki, which is a smaller volume, which begins on page 443. And again, introduction to the work, written out in a nice font in the italics, and again with photographs, for example like this, where it's showing a Japanese bamboo hat. And then of course goes in finally to the actual poetry, as I mentioned before, by it's 100 poems of Ise Saburo Yoshimori, and again with a nice introduction. So it's a great work to get. There is one work that people tend to talk about, that's the Nimpiden, which is not in here. I don't know if Don Roley has actually brought out a book on that. I have to look up. But yeah, this is certainly something to have it on your bookshelf. It's a really nice work. There are other authors who have brought out translation of the Bansenshukai. I'm not going to compare them. This is the only one that's on my shelf. And I bought it basically because although myself and Don don't always see eye to eye, as I said, he spent 15 years in Japan, he speaks Japanese, he knows about the culture, and so I thought it was probably the best one to get because he has the background of the martial arts, the culture, and the language. So he probably understands what he's talking about when he translated his book. So anyway, I think it's available on Amazon. I'd say go and buy it, but you've got to study it because it is the Bible. You want to learn the ninja mindset, study every little paragraph, get to know its meaning, and I think maybe then you'll understand the mindset of ninja. Because one thing I always said, ninja is not about the techniques. It's not about climbing walls and rolling on the ground or throwing shuriken. It's about the mindset. The thing that makes the ninja is the ninja mindset. And this is all about the ninja mindset. Anyway, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to buy my book. This I brought out a few months ago. The 9 Levels of Power, Life Lessons from the Secret Ninja Scrolls. It's actually basically a self-help book based on some of the philosophies, mindset of the ninja. So yeah, please buy his book, subscribe to the channel, and I'll try and do a book review next week, and I'll see you then. Thank you very much.